Alright, today I'm going to show you how to do an oil change on a 2008 Land Rover LR2. Before we get started, here's what I typically use to do the oil change. You need to jack the car up, of course, and make sure you get one that has enough clearance for an SUV. I also have a breaker bar set you're going to need to use to get to the oil filter that's pretty deep inside the engine, underneath the hood. This is a 36 and also have an extension bar set. Oil I use is 5W30 from Mobil 1. Filter, Mann-Filter HU925, but I'm sure there are others as well. Need an oil pan. You don't have to have this, but usually for safety reasons, I like to put it on the back of the tire after I jack the car up. I only have one body. And a wrench set. Besides that, a couple of gloves here. Just keep your hands. I mean, your hand's going to get dirty no matter what. However, it helps a little bit. So this is pretty much the set I use to get the job done. I also have a pretty tight space, so you don't need to have a lot of space to get this job done. Really, if you live in a environment that's pretty compact like I do, you can still get it done. Right, first, you need to jack the car up. Make sure you place this little socket here correctly. There's a little gap at the top here. You want to make sure it lines up with the bottom of the jack point of your car. Then just jack away. Right now we're about 1 notch up. Generally I like to get it to about 2 notches up at least. Alright. Alright, so that's one side, and do the same thing to the other side. Okay. Yeah, forgot to mention, put these in. Just for safety precaution. One thing I like to do is use a lot of newspaper to put it underneath the car. Just in case, sometimes shit happens, and if you have a little bit of leak, you can catch some of it before it gets a lot worse. Alright, and now we go underneath the car. Alright, now we're looking at the bottom of the car facing the front. There's this plate that we need to remove first. It's kind of like an oil pan type deal that prevents oil leaks from getting on the ground on the roadways. So this plate here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 12mm bolts. So let's get those removed. So now we're down to the last bolt. Before you completely remove the bolt, just loosen it but keep it in place, because if you let go of the last one, this plate's going to drop on you and you're not going to be able to get out. So leave the last one just in place and then get out. And at this point, you can generally just use your hand if it's loosened enough. If not, that's fine. You can keep using the tool. At this point, once it's loose enough, use one hand to hold up the plate and then unscrew the remaining bolt. At this point, you can use both your hands and take the plate down. Okay. Next, you want to put the tray somewhere just a little bit behind the this bolt that's holding in the tank. This bolt right here, you need to unscrew that, and once you unscrew this, oil is gonna come flying out. So that's why you want to push it back a little bit, just from the initial draining. And this bolt right here is 17 millimeters. And when I unscrew this, usually what I like to do is put some pressure towards the the reservoir here, so that when it's loose enough, the bolt just doesn't come flying out when the oil drains. All right, so pull it out real quick, and you see the oil drain shooting out into the back. Now you want to place this oil pan just right, so that as this empties out, the pressure is gonna decrease. And when the pressure gets really low, it's not gonna be shooting way back here. So you want to make sure that even at the very end, the oil tray is gonna be able to catch the oil coming out. Because at the end, it'll simply be dripping down as opposed to shooting a foot back. And this is also when the newspapers come in handy, because you're gonna have this, your finger is gonna be drenched in oil, and this bolt is gonna be drenched in oil. So newspapers are great for great for stuff like that. All right, so this is where the breaker bar comes in, because the oil filter is pretty deep inside the engine. So I use a few extension pieces. And then connect the breaker bar to at the very end. All right, again, this is a 36. All right. All right, so the oil filter is actually somewhere underneath here. So first thing we need to do here is actually to get this power steering fluid reservoir out of the way a little bit. You don't need to, you really don't need to move anything else. It's definitely very tight. It's really hard to see here, but ultimately, you'll find if you use a flashlight, you'll be able to see that there's the oil filter cap. So kind of push it in there, turn it around just to make sure you got the right place, and then at this point, just simply turn. At this point, you can pretty much just pull this piece out, and just use your hand to turn, do the rest of the turns here. Once it's loosened up enough. All right, once it feels like it's completely loose, remove the piece here. Get a piece of towel, because when you pull out the filter, it'll be dripping with it's a little tight for sure, but it can be done. All right, so this is our dirty filter, pretty dirty as you can see. All right, so there's a seal here. Use a flathead screwdriver and get it out of the way, because normally the new filters, they'll come with a new seal, so you want to use that. All right, with the new filter, there's really no certain, you can push it in either direction really. It doesn't really matter. All right, at this point, the filter's ready. All right, let's see how we're doing with the oil pan, with the draining. It's almost completely drained, so if you want, you can wait a little longer if you like. But I think it's good enough. So just push this back in. Tighten it. All right, now that we sealed the oil tank, we can pour in the new oil. Okay, so now let's put the oil filter back in. The new oil filter, of course. Just tighten it with your hand first, and then we use the breaker bar to get in there and tighten it real good. Okay, looks like that's as tight as we can get with our bare hands. So now let's use the breaker bar. Okay, looks like that's pretty tight. You don't want to make it too tight. Just check the tightness with your hand just to make sure that you can unscrew it with your bare hands. If you can, obviously that's no good. All right, looks pretty good. Let's put this power steering fluid reservoir back into its place. And now is the fun part. We get to put in new oil. First, unscrew this. It's a good idea to use an oil filter. You don't have to use it, but it just makes things a little easier because you don't have to be extremely precise when you pour in the oil. Alright, so at this point, we're done pouring in the new oil. Again, this is where the newspapers come in very handy. You can just drop things on the ground. Make sure you didn't leave any tools behind. All right, looks clear, looks good. Now, all right, so one of the last step here is to put this plate back in underneath the car. So this part's gonna be a little challenging, especially if you're doing it by yourself, because you only have two hands and this thing's not exactly light. So you gotta be able to hold it up with one hand while use your other hand to put the bolts back in. So notice that there's a little the piece that sticks out here. What it is that on the bottom of the car, there's kind of like a lip or a ledge of some sort. So what you want to do is start with two hands first, and then angle it, and then push this piece that sticks out above over that lip, so that it'll hold, the car will hold this plate in place for you. And then at that point, you can simply use one hand to hold it, and then use the other hand to screw it in. Screw it in one bolt here. As soon as you get one bolt in, the rest is pretty easy. All right. All right. So, all right. So that looks like it's kind of in place. So now, what I'll do. just like that. Now you're good. So again, we're gonna put the 13 millimeter piece back in. Alright, just give it one last check to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Alright, now as far as oil changing, the job is done. Now it's got to, there are two remaining things to do, of course. Undo the jack, and then properly take care of the dirty oil. So to properly undo this, you're gonna have to raise the car back up. You're gonna have to jack up the car a little bit first, so it gives you a little bit of room to take that piece out. Make sure it's in place. Okay, you don't have to jack it very high. As soon as you can take this piece out, it's good enough. You need to pour the dirty oil back into these containers, and then take them, recycle them properly within your own city. Different cities have different regulation and requirements. So again, if you're working by yourself, it could be a little challenging. One thing I found to be pretty useful is to find a wall and then put the filter on top and kind of lean it. You don't have to put it right next to the wall, but give it like maybe a couple of inches, and then put a filter over it. And then depends on the type of pan you have. This one's pretty good because it's got like a drainage hose, drainage at the bottom. So as you pour in, just make sure that you give it a slow and steady pour, so that you don't, the last thing you want to do is tip this thing over and make a huge mess. Now a challenge here could be to figure out exactly when does it fill up. Yeah, so as you pour in, you can see this filled up. So that'll tell you exactly when does this bottle fill up. You don't want to get it too close, because you still have some oil in your filter, so you got to compensate for that. Usually when I get to near the top, that's good enough for me, because you still have another bottle, empty container. One thing I like to do here is to use a few pieces of paper towel, and then kind of just plug it into the drain. Because once you can leave it in your garage after this, and then over time it's going to soak up any remaining oil. And we're done.